Welcome to Living Well with MS Coffee Break, a part of the Overcoming MS podcast family, made for people with multiple sclerosis interested in making healthy lifestyle choices. Today, you'll meet someone living with MS from our global Overcoming MS community. Our guests will share their personal perspective on the positive and practical lifestyle changes they have made which have helped them lead a fuller life. You can check out our show notes for more information and useful links. You can find these on our website at overcomingms.org/podcast. If you enjoy the show, please spread the word about us on your social media channels. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. So, get your favourite drink ready and let's meet our guest. For this episode of the Living Well with MS Coffee Break, I'm glad to welcome Pat Feller from San Diego, USA. Pat is a dynamic member of the OMS community who's really transformed his life by following the OMS program and is now in the process of transitioning his career from financial advisor to certified health coach. Pat, thanks so much for agreeing to take part in our podcast.
Thanks, Jeff.
So firstly, Pat, our audience would like to know a bit about you and your life. So could you share some background information on where you're from, what you do, and anything about your personal or family life that would give our listeners a sense of who you are?
Sure. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I appreciate it, Jeff. I am a Southern California guy. I was born in Newport Beach, California. No, I didn't surf. I body surf, though. I went to the University of Oregon. In my 20s, I bounced around. I spent 4 years in France, a year in Taiwan, married my wife who's from Hong Kong. We have two lovely daughters, 19 and 16. I ended up in a career in financial services working for investment managers up until my diagnosis 4 years ago. And right now, we are slowly transitioning to the empty nest phase because we have one daughter in college and our next daughter will graduate for university in a year's time. So that's where I'm at right now.
So is that a pretty high stress job that you're in, it sounds like?
It was high. Yeah, it was high stress. It was high energy, high stress. Yeah.
And how about your experiences with MS? So could you tell us a bit about when you were diagnosed, what happened, how you found out you had MS, and how you initially coped with it?
Yeah, like a lot of people, when I look back, I can see when the symptoms started, probably 10 years before my actual diagnosis. I used to be a very ardent runner. Sounds like similar to you. I used to run every day, 4 or 6 miles. I ran a couple of marathons. And when I look back, I'll give you an example. In San Diego County, we have the largest Marine base in the United States. It's called Camp Pendleton, and every June they have what is called a mud run. So you run 4 or 5 miles. They throw you in mud and bark orders at you, and you climb over things. And I did this with a team. And the first year we did this, I crushed it. I was by far the fastest. And 6 years later, I struggled to finish it. And the other guys were looking at me like, hey, like, Pat, what happened? Because I had this exhausted look on my face. It was, but like a guy, I never thought to advocate for my health and go to a doctor and say, I think there's something really wrong with me. I just thought, you know what? I'm getting old. This is life. And there were progressively more symptoms that should have keyed me in on what was going on, but I had no background, no family history with MS. And like a lot of people, I had one old childhood friend who had been diagnosed with MS. I met him once after his diagnosis, and it's like the cliche. It's like the cliche. Hey, you look fine to me. You look amazing. Like, what's the big deal? I look back on that and I feel very guilty. So in 2017, I started feeling some really, a lot of symptoms. And then the kicker was, Jeff, in the fall, I got a flu shot in 2017, and that just cascaded. In 1 month, I lost 35 pounds. I went legally blind in my left eye. My short-term memory completely disappeared. I was starting a new job at this time. So when you lose your short-term memory and starting a new job, that is not good. I was having trouble walking from the parking structure to the office. My balance was off. It was a nightmare. A neurologist. I was misdiagnosed for probably 6 months until finally an optometrist said, "Hey, you're legally blind in your left eye." I went and saw an ophthalmologist. Then I saw a neurological ophthalmologist. They then said, "You've got to see a neurologist immediately." He put me in touch with a friend of his who saw me the next day, ran MRIs, and said, "You got MS." And so I was at the time of diagnosis, I was in a really bad way. And as a male, Jeff, I was coming off of a successful career, a career that in the financial services industry, I used to travel a lot. So high energy, a lot of stress. And I could see that my career doing that was probably evaporating because I just simply didn't have the energy to do that sort of thing. Plus, my bladder and bowels were a mess, which is a very common MS symptom. And I remember, so here's the thing. My transition to OMS occurred. I was immediately put on Tysabri. And I remember, I'd always considered myself a healthy person. So I was shocked. I'm like, what? I'm not a healthy person? Like that can't be true, but it was true. And I was sitting there in the infusion center getting the Tysabri, and up until then, the specialists were saying that we have these therapies for you to take. Nothing else. They didn't talk about anything else except these therapies. So as I'm taking the Tysabri, and it's a very expensive medicine, a side effect profile, I felt very disempowered. I felt like a bystander to my health, and I didn't like that feeling at all. And so I somehow, I forget how I initially came across OMS, but I got the book, and in the book, Dr. Jelinek talks about the self-efficacy or the self-agency that comes about when you take steps in your lifestyle, steps with the diet, your eating pattern, exercise, stress management, that you no longer feel like a victim, but that you feel like you have an active role in your recovery, and psychologically that's a mind shift right now, and that really resonated with me, and I thought, oh my gosh, like this is a board certified doctor who's saying this, and it was a game changer for me. So within 6, and that led me to the research of Swank. I came across Dr. Terry Walls, which is not completely aligned, but from a nutritional density standpoint, it is aligned. So it was leading me to different practitioners. So right now, this has evolved so that today I'm really enthusiastic about Dr. Sarai Stancic, who also is a triple certified, board certified MD here in the States, and she has adopted lifestyle medicine. She's not affiliated with OMS, but it's completely in line with OMS. And she similar to Dr. Jelinek, is thriving. And that really gets me super excited. So I thought, you know what if I transition my life, like a lot of people do in the MS world, to trying to give back, and that it can be part of my health journey. So I'm slowly transitioning to becoming a health and wellness coach as well.
Yeah, I think I think you were quite lucky in the States, really, because OMS, certainly until recently, didn't have a big presence in the US. But you can now. So in the UK, I was fortunate because they have a program where they send the book out for free, and that's a charitable donor has funded that. In the US, though, I would say that you can now get the ebook for free. So I don't think you can get a free copy. You can get the Overcoming, and there is a new version of the Overcoming Multiple Sclerosis book coming out not so long. I think I'm allowed to say that now. It's in the relatively near future. But you can get it on Amazon and other good booksellers. I would say there are many booksellers. You get it in normal booksellers, but you can get an ebook for free. So there is funding there, so you can get a version, so you can look at it on your ebook reader. And that is available in the States. So it is expanding, and there is more stuff going on. And certainly there's doctors in the US who support it. Aaron Boster's a trustee of the organisation, who's a doctor in Ohio.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with. He's at Ohio State, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, I did not know about his affiliation. That's really interesting. That's great.
Yeah, he just in the last couple of months became one of the trustees, and yeah, he's very supportive of overcoming MS. So yeah, which is fortunate, really. I think it's sort of the global spread is a good thing. So, how did you do with the OMS program then? So, what positives did you see? What problems did you have?
Yeah, I think it's been very positive. And I'll give you an example. Is recently I go to University of California, San Diego Health System. I'm with a neurologist who I think is very competent, very, very open-minded, very supportive. And she placed me in a clinical trial that they were testing MS patients, their biological age with their chronological age, and they took a lot of blood analysis. They had a certain number of biological health markers, or biological health markers, and they had said usually the variance is plus or minus 2 years. I am 53 years old, and my biological age is 47. So that's great, I think that tells you something that, but please don't get me wrong, everything's not hunky-dory. A lot of neurological damage occurred, which I'm still healing, rehabilitating, repairing. So I don't deny that. But from a health marker standpoint, from a biological standpoint, OMS is doing wonderfully. I feel like my cognitive function has improved dramatically, which is so important in the MS world. I've got a lot more energy. Yesterday, I've been following I've got a pedometer. I track my steps every day. And yesterday, I ratcheted a personal record this year of 15,000 steps, which might not sound like very much to people out there, but when you've got MS, that's a good thing. So, so it's I can see the fruit in Jeff. The wonderful thing is my mindset has changed so that I truly believe that through OMS, I'm healing in a multi-systems way. Our bodies are comprised of all these different systems, right? And when I say system, it could be like the lymphatic system, the endocrine system, cognitive, our gut health, our mitochondria, all these things. And what OMS is allowing me to do is to heal and promote better health outcomes for me. So I'm super excited about OMS.
And something you said before, actually, which was the mindset of doing something. And it actually gets called out in the book, and it talks about faith and that thinking you're doing something actually makes it more likely that you'll have a positive outcome. And that's why when they test for drug trials, they have to use a placebo, because actually people on the placebo, on average, all get a bit better. Even though they're not taking anything but sugar and water, or whatever it is, they get a bit better because they think that they're doing something. And there was a guy in the UK, and it was for the BBC, but he was a lot behind 5-2 fasting was one of the things he did. But he also did a thing on placebo effect, and they gave everyone a placebo, and they had back issues that they'd been through every form of medication and everything available to the health system, and they didn't work. They cured, I think, 50% of these people. They gave them nothing other than, what they were giving them was just saline drips or something. It did nothing for them, basically. And then those 50% of the people who got better, even after they told them that it was a placebo, it still carried on. They still got better because they basically changed their mindset, and they'd said, so a lot of those people are still better, even though nothing had happened to them medically. So the mindset, I think, is an important thing, which is what you're saying. I think that the fact that we're doing something actually helps our outcome, because we know we've taken on board and we're doing something and we're getting better. We're not passengers to a journey that ends up wherever it may be. We're actually trying to do the best thing, and I think that in itself has a positive outcome. So you've talked about the good things. So how was it going? And was a lot of people see it as a diet, and I don't really like that because it's much more than a diet.
I don't like the word diet. Yeah, I don't use that word diet.
How was it actually switching? Presumably you switched your diet, maybe your exercise, mindfulness. How was it actually transitioning to doing all those parts of the program?
Exercise was easy because I've always been very, exercise oriented. Stress management. I also hired a life coach who, in conjunction with the OMS, has been helped me a great deal in managing stress. And then also with a lot of people, it's so interesting talking about eating patterns, right? Eating pattern. I would lie to say, oh, Jeff, it's been a piece of cake. No. Why? Because when you what I've learned through the research and my reading is, are you familiar with the term the bliss point?
No, I'm not. What's that?
So the bliss point is what food engineers call the optimum combination of sugar, fat, salt in these ingredients. So they're looking for the bliss point with sugar, salt, fat, which really makes these foods irresistibly addictive. There's a reason why people have trouble changing their eating. I called it changing their food relationships, because from the get-go, we establish a relationship with food, right? And typically it's going to be the more processed, the higher the bliss point. And coming out of World War II, the United States needed to provide enough calories for the population. So the food engineers really did a wonderful job. I would argue they actually did too good of a job, because these foods are so doggone good. They taste so delicious because they're hitting all the dopamine receptors and all that, biochemistry going on. But I've been able to, over time. So I got this from Britain, your Olympic or the Tour de France bicycling team, the aggregation of incremental gains. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah. I mean, I think most people in the UK would be. It's a guy called Dave Brailsford was behind the team. And
that really resonated with me. I'm like, I don't need to ship all at once. I can make these little changes over time. And that's what I've been doing. So I've pretty much eliminated sugar. Right now I'm in the process of transitioning. I have been eating a little bit of chicken. I will confess some pescatarian orientation. I'm now going full whole food plant-based, and it's a journey, and a lot of people have to realize, if you expect just to turn on a dime immediately, you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Go for those incremental changes. I'm in a marathon. I'm not in a sprint. I'm in a marathon. That's for the rest of my life. And I need to set myself up with small wins and build upon those. And that becomes, in the financial services industry, we call it the power of compound interest. When you earn interest or dividends, and they compound over time, and over time that creates a lot of wealth. I feel what we're doing with OMS is another form of compounded interest. We have to take a long-term orientation, not get discouraged when you buy that wrong stock and it goes down. or you have a little bit of a trouble with OMS, you know what? It's all right. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself some grace and just, dust yourself off, stand up again and go at it and stay and keep a positive mindset, because our bodies, I'm a Christian. And so I sometimes I've brought, kind of a spiritual component to this. Is it's amazing the way our bodies are designed to heal in all these fashions. And OMS really is promoting that healing, that how our bodies are designed. And that's really very exciting. Again, that's feeding into my mindset. And that also feeds into what OMS has helped me with, is finding a good tribe. We all need tribes. We can associate, we can join bad tribes that pull us down, or we can join good tribes that lift us up and elevate us. I've been very proactive in establishing or joining really healthy tribes. And OMS is like a wonderful tribe for me to be in. I love, when I'm talking to other OMS ambassadors, I love it. I love talking to them. And when I'm talking to other people who understand OMS, it makes my day. It really does.
So those groups, just to highlight to everyone, they're called circles in the OMS world. So if you look on the website for Overcoming MS Circles, then they're regional groups of people following OMS, and ambassadors sort of run those groups. It's not, they're not in charge really, are they? Ambassadors. It's more just they'll sort of manage it.
Facilitator. Yeah, facilitator. Yeah. That's a good plug. Yeah, so go on the website. There's a map. Plug in where you are, and I would just encourage anyone to join a circle. They're wonderful.
And if you are a very long way from anyone else, there is also a circle for people who are not, if you're, let's say you're on where could be the worst place? If you're on an Antarctic base doing research, I'm pretty sure there's not a circle for the Antarctic. So there is also a circle that covers people who are not close to another one. So so don't worry if you're miles from anywhere. There is a circle specifically.
And there might be some people out there who are like, well, Pat, I'm not doing very well right now. Maybe my ataxia gait, my mobility, or whatever. I'm just not doing well. I don't feel like I'm healthy enough to join that tribe. That's not true, because we do also have a global progressive circle. I'm the host of that. I'm the ambassador. And because right now I changed. Here's a funny one, Jeff. My previous neurologist said, Pat, you're primary progressive because I've never had any relapses, but I have been kind of slowly deteriorating in certain functions. But my EDSS is only 3.5, and that's really not very much. I changed neurologist, and she said, you're RRMS with possibly transitioning to progressive. We're not sure. So I don't let that get me down. I never said that I'm perfect. I'm working on it. And this circle, this is a circle for anyone who's secondary progressive or primary progressive. Come and join us. It's a great circle.
And so on another topic, how did you have to adapt your daily habits? So did you find it easy? So you sort of said, so diet you did a bit. Did you find it quite easy to do mindfulness? You said exercise was quite easy. The mindfulness side of it, did that work all right?
Yeah. It really comes down to what's really been a change for me is trying to be far more intentional with my day, intentional with what my eating pattern, intentional with making sure I allocate a block of time for a variety of exercise. I'm intentional about getting my steps and intentional about stepping back and doing some mindfulness. And so for me, that's a bit of a combination of I'm a little bit of a Hoffer, Wim Hoff.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that,
I mean, well, it's worth mentioning that if people aren't aware. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Wim Hof, because I
wow,
think it's quite an interesting topic.
the Iceman. He's a man. He does not have MS, but what happened to him? He's from Holland. Um, a while back, when he had a young family. He was married. He had 3 or 4 kids. Tragedy struck in the form of his wife committing suicide. It plunged him in depression. He struggled with just coping with the loss, coping with the depression. And he's come up with on the surface, can be very simple techniques. There's 2 of them. One is breathing, deep breaths, you're basically hyperventilating, and then you hold it, and you do rounds. And then also cold water. That's why they call him the Iceman. You can do a cold shower, take an ice bath, packs of ice, and it really has a remarkable way of promoting health, of helping your immune system, as well as just promote a sense of wellness and balance in your life. So there's been they've put him to the test in hospitals, and it's real. There's medical evidence through the testing of him that this can make a difference. And so for me, I am not dogmatic, Jeff, and like, okay, I can only do the OMS. I like to think of it, I have a quiver of a lot of different arrows in it, or a toolkit, and we see what works for us, and we add it to our toolbox. And if it's aligned, and they should be aligned, obviously. And so it's, for me as a Christian, I'm going to pray. I'm going to do some deep breathing. I'm going to change my inner voice, because that helps reprogram the mindset. So that's been a journey about just changing my inner voice and making it very positive, very life affirming. And it's been a journey, but it's been a good one.
And so the last nearly 2 years now, we've been going through COVID-19 pandemic. So how has that affected your healthy habits? I'm not quite sure what the situation was in San Diego, whether you had full lockdowns, or, I mean, could you get out and exercise? How did it change?
It was tough. I would, I'd be remiss if I said it was easy, but yeah, we were in lockdown. What I've realized that as I've aged, I've become very social. Social connections are very meaningful to me. Relationships are very meaningful to me. And at that time, 2 years ago, I had attempted to return to full-time traditional work, going to an office, putting in the hours 9 to 5. And when we went into lockdown, the office became empty, and it was really difficult. Also, it was just a 9 to 5 lifestyle. When you have MS, it's very difficult. So it wasn't conducive to my healing. So I needed to step back and have to really pivot and redefine my life, redefine my purpose. And I find that, I'll tell you, Jeff, as a male with MS, I find that a very interesting subject of when men are diagnosed with MS. A lot of times we need to change our careers, because maybe our previous career was not conducive to our newly found prioritization of health through the form of OMS and whatever else we're doing. So like, there's numerous people within OMS that come to mind. And so I'm in the process now of kind of repurposing myself. And so during the lockdown, then it was tough, but that made me very aware of the importance of social connections. And that's when I really became much more involved with OMS because I saw I need this in my life. I need the social connections for my mental health and to encourage my OMS protocol. So yeah, that's when I deepened my relationship with OMS.
I think that social aspect as well. I think no one knows what it's like to have MS except for other people with MS. So my family they're fully supportive, but they don't fully understand. And my neurologist is an expert, but actually doesn't fully understand what it's like to have MS. So, I think the connections that I get with the circles that I'm in and speaking to people like yourself is, although we all have different symptoms, there's still an understanding, I think, of what it's like to have MS. So I think that social aspect is so important because no one else can fully understand it except for people who are going through it.
So I was on a week or two ago, I was on a call with other ambassadors. We were getting to know each other, and we spent some time talking OMS related type stuff. And then at the end, there was an ambassador in Berlin. And at the end, she said, in English, not German, but in English, she goes, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" And I'm like, yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. How are you guys doing? Because a lot of times when people have a title, I'm an ambassador, right? You just assume, oh, they've got it all together, right? They've got it all together. But it's like, then it started coming up. Yeah. There's always going to be, there's going to be things out of your control. And you can't let those things discourage you, but they are a reality. And so when I help host and facilitate circle calls, what I try to do are, there's a number of things, but I want to make sure, number one, we acknowledge any trials and tribulations we're going through. Acknowledge it. I don't want to dwell on it, but we got to say like, yeah, man, yeah, my mobility has been declining, or this or that. Acknowledge it. But then let's talk about what brings you joy in life? What gets you out of bed? What sparks your eyes? What made you laugh in the last week? And so there's a bit of a sweet and sour to it. Acknowledge the difficulty. MS is, like you said, it's inherently a difficult condition. Got to acknowledge it, but let's focus on the positive for the long term. So that's what we try to do.
And as a final question, is there, or what would be the best piece of advice you could give to someone who is newly diagnosed with MS, new to the OMS program? What would that bit of advice be?
Choose your tribes wisely. OMS is a great tribe, and be aware of the importance of your mindset. It's all about mindset. Focus on your mindset. If you can focus on that, everything else will fall into place. So choose your tribe wisely and adopt a really positive, affirmative mindset for yourself. Those are my 2 bits of advice.
Excellent. And with that, thank you very much for joining us, Pat Feller.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living Well with MS Coffee Break. Please check out this episode's show notes at overcomingms.org/podcast. You'll find all sorts of useful links and bonus information there. If you would like to be featured in a future Coffee Break episode or have any suggestions, please email us at podcast@overcomingms.org. You can also subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Living Well with MS Coffee Break is kindly supported by a grant from the Happy Charitable Trust. If you would like to support the Overcoming MS charity and help keep our podcast advertising free, you can donate online at overcomingms.org/donate. Thank you for your support. Living Well with MS Coffee Break is produced by Overcoming MS, the world's leading multiple sclerosis healthy lifestyle charity. We are here to help inform, support and empower everyone affected by MS. To find out more and subscribe to our e-newsletter, please visit our website at overcomingms.org. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next time.